In this video, I'm going to explain how you can adapt between different sensitivities and how to find the perfect sense for you. A lot of people struggle when they change their sense, and if you think you're one of these people, this video will help you a ton. The reason that a lot of people struggle is that they try to play the same way on two different sensitivities. Let's say I'm on 30 centimeters per 360 using mostly arm motion. This would be very hard for me to aim well, as this sense requires motion that is too precise for arm aiming. So if I were to lower my sense to 50 centimeters per 360, then I would instantly feel better. I actually did do this, and I got a lot better afterwards. However, if you use a sense of 50 centimeters per 360 and you feel worse after switching from 30, this is completely understandable. The reason you're feeling worse is because you're aiming primarily with your wrist on both settings. Your wrist has a smaller range of motion and more precision, so your wrist is complemented by a sense of roughly 30 centimeters per 360. So the best way to adapt to a new sense is changing the way you aim when you change your sense. For example, if I were to aim on 30 centimeters for 360, I'd force myself to move my wrist more. But if I were on 60 or 70, I wouldn't move it at all, and I'd barely move my fingers either. The higher your sense is, the more you want to move your wrist and fingers, and the lower it becomes, the more you want to incorporate arm motion into your flicks. So now it might seem like you can do equally well on almost all sensitivities, and maybe you are one of the few people who can, but this is a rare skill. The reason for this is that very few people have developed their arms, wrist, and fingers to be equally viable for aiming. This is simply because you use your arm and your wrist different amounts and they develop separately. For that reason, your best sensitivity is the one that complements the muscles you've developed the most control over. To find this sense, you just have to go into an aim trainer task and try using your wrist at 30, your arm on 60, and see what scores are best. Maybe it's something in between around 50 and 40 and you're using a bit of both, but just try and figure out what makes you aim the best. I personally aim on about 50 centimeters per 360 because I use my fingers to micro adjust, so I need a high enough sense that they actually do something when I move them, but I need a low enough sense that I can control my arm, which I use for the majority of my flicks. If you play Warzone, I'd recommend using a tracking task due to the slow TTK of Warzone. However, for Siege and Valorant players, I'd recommend using a flicking task due to those games requiring precise flicks. For Apex players, I'd recommend using a combination of both, as that game requires flicking and then tracking constantly. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of content, subscribe for more.